Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Ready for Rome orientation webinar. I'm very happy that you all could join us today. My name is Shelly Ruel, and I am the community manager at ItaliaPass. And today I am joined by my colleague, Sofia Bragaglia, and she is our ItaliaPass Italy Experience Specialist. I've lived in Rome for over 20 years now, and Sofia is originally from Italy. So we both have a lot of experience here in Italy, and we're looking forward to sharing some information with you today as you are making your way over here to Rome. Before I get started, though, on all that good information, I want to just go over what is ItaliaPass, because sometimes people aren't really sure, how did I get this ItaliaPass email? So most likely you're here because you purchased a train ticket with Italia Rail. And so there's a family of brands, the Italia brands, that includes Italia Rail, Italia Tours, Drive, and Hotels. And all of these brands have worked with millions of tourists exploring Italy. And our CEO wanted to find a way to help all of his customers have the best trip to Italy ever. And so he created ItaliaPass. ItaliaPass is a membership benefits program. It's like an Italy travel pass. Nothing else like it really exists out there on the market. It costs $149 and you get $500 plus in value for your Italy trip between discounts and special experiences, free tickets to monuments. And we'll be talking a little bit about those benefits as we go along today, in case that might be something that you would like to add to your trip. So here's what we're going to cover today. The first thing we're going to talk about is arriving at FCO, which is Fiumicino Airport, also known as Leonardo da Vinci Airport, and how to get into the city from the airport, because the airport is about a half an hour outside of the city center. We'll talk a little bit about our ItaliaPass lounge at Rome's Termini train station and how to ride public transport, how to get around if you want to ride public transport. I'll give you some information about restaurants and how to avoid some tourist traps. We'll talk about how you can get into some monuments and famous places for free and have a $100 off in Italia Tours experience. I'll give you a couple of more of my favorite local tips. And then that will last about a half an hour, the informational part of the webinar. And then we'll go into a live Q&A. And that'll be about 15 minutes. And if there are questions that we don't get to in those 15 minutes, you can also just write them and I will answer them offline in our community. The way that we're going to do the Q&A is on the bottom with the functions, the chat functionality where it says more. You might have three dots where it says more. There's a Q&A. Oops, let me go back. There's a Q&A. And when you click on the Q&A, you can ask your question and we'll answer those live. So I hopped forward to the next slide. So I'm going to let Sofia come on in and tell us about how to get into the city from Fiumicino Airport.
Hello, everyone. Thank you, Shelly, and thank you again to everyone for joining us today. So yeah, as Shelly said, let's start from your arrival at FCO. Let's say you've arrived in Rome, which is usually one of the main destinations from people that are coming from abroad. You'll have a few options to get to the center of Rome. And as you see on the slide, they're all indicated in the terminal, so it's fairly easy to navigate. The first option that you'll have to reach is to reach Roma Termini. This is the main train station in Rome, and you can reach it by train. There are two types of trains that you can take. The first one is called Leonardo Express, which is a direct train that goes to the Termini station. It's available on Italia Rail for about $16, and it's the main type of train that travels there. However, if you would like to get to another station in Rome or on a different part of the city, there's also more local trains that get you to smaller stations such as Trastevere and Ostiense. They're all considered regional trains, but these two that I've just mentioned are not. They're not the express way, let's say. Both are available on Italia Rail. The ones that get you to the smaller stations are about $10 on Italia Rail. So those are the main options for rail. We generally get a lot of questions on whether you should book your tickets in advance. And usually I do recommend that our members book before traveling, especially if you're traveling during the high season. That's usually May to early October. The queues can get very long. The servers can get a little overwhelmed. So it's always recommended to just be ready once you're already once you get to the airport to already have your tickets essentially. Just be careful with the timing because in case you book, for example, the Leonardo Express, the tickets for that type of train are time specific. So you will want to figure out exactly when you will be at the train station. I usually recommend booking a time that's at least, let's say, an hour and a half to 2 hours after your landing, just to make sure that you have enough time to, deplane, go through customs, and make your way to the station. And if you have any trains leaving from Roma Termini, definitely don't book anything before. I would wait at least 3 hours after your scheduled landing time, just for, again, deplaning, and then maybe there's some delays, luggage issues, or anything of that kind. That's what you want to avoid. So again, 3 hours is usually a safe bet for any train that's traveling from Termini. You also, anytime you go to a big train station, such as Termini, you'll want to arrive about 20 to 25 minutes before your scheduled departure time. Just, find your platform, find your way through the station. That's a good window to have time-wise. So that's it for trains. There's also taxis that you can use, of course, to get into the city of Rome. They're usually outside the terminal, and they have a fixed rate of 55 euros. Or another ground transfer option will be a shuttle bus or a private transfer. We do offer those. So if you want to go straight to your accommodation in Rome with a private service, that is something that we offer. And it's available both on the Italia Tours website, or if you want to reach out to us directly, we would be happy to give you more information or book it directly for you. Now, moving on to renting a car. Should I rent a car? This is a question that comes up a lot, and there's no clear-cut answer, no universal answer that works for everybody, but I'll give you some pointers to help you decide. Usually something like the main criterion that I would use to decide whether you should rent a car or not is where you will be going. So let's say if you're planning on exploring some more remote areas of Italy, some countryside areas of the country, um, an unusual example could be Tuscany or the Amalfi Coast. Then in this case, renting a car is a great option because these areas do not usually have a lot of transfer options for public transport, trains, and whatnot. So having a car is a huge advantage if you want to go to smaller towns or, just do some more in-depth exploration. However, if you are going to be visiting just, the major cities, if you're just going to Rome, Venice, and Florence, and you plan on staying inside the city, then I wouldn't. At that point, the best option for transfers would be just traveling by train in between these cities. And once you're inside the cities, traveling by buses, trams, streetcars. Most major cities are very well equipped. So that's usually the best option. Also because if you do get a car inside the city, you may notice there's a lot, and I mean a lot, of very strict car traffic rules that you may run into. Even Italians struggle with those. So it makes driving inside the city is really, really tricky. And I would not recommend it. Regardless of which option you choose, if you do decide to rent a car, you can do so on our platform, italiadrive.com. And as a member, you do benefit from a $10 discount that you can redeem directly on the website or by contacting us after your booking. And now for the lounge, this is another perk of being a member. It's the access to our ItaliPass lounge, which is located in Rome Termini, which again, as I mentioned before, is the main station in Rome. This is an excellent place to relax if you have some free time, either before boarding a train or if you're waiting for your hotel check-in time. You can just come here, relax, and enjoy the free Wi-Fi, the espresso and refreshments that we have there. We also offer free luggage storage for both carry-ons or larger bags. And you can book this on our website as well, or again, by reaching out to us. We ask that you book just because we can only keep the bags during opening hours. and of course give them back to you during that time frame. So it is important to book in advance, but that is something that you can do. And of course, we also have lounge hosts that will be welcoming you into Rome if it's your first time, or if you have any questions about the city or traveling, they're always happy to help. So yeah, now I'll hand it over to Shelley for some information on public transport within the city.
Okay, thank you. So our public transport system is known as ATAC, and we have three main types of transport that you can use, mainly buses, but we also have a subway line, which is referred to as the metro. That's short for Metropolitana. So that's our underground. And it's very easy to navigate because we only have two lines, A and B, and they only cross at one point, which is, once again, as we mentioned several times, Termini train station, which is a really big travel hub. Lots of transportation goes through there. So that's where the metro line crosses. So when you can transfer from line A to line B and vice versa. And there's a few tram streetcars as well, but those aren't generally as useful for visitors because they're not really, there's one in the historic center, but the rest are a little bit further out. So in terms of the pricing, it's really quite reasonable compared to other large European cities. The tickets cost €1.50 each, and the way they work is on a time-based system. So you don't have to worry about zones of the city or anything like that, or the number of rides that you take, except with one exception, which I'll touch on in a minute. Though the ticket is good for 100 minutes, and that's unlimited starting from the first ride. So when you get on the first bus, if you have a paper ticket, you validate it in the machine, on the machine that's on the bus, and your travel time starts from then. You have 100 minutes from that point forward, unlimited on public transport, with the exception of the subway. On the subway with the ticket, you're allowed one full ride. And by full ride, I mean from the time you enter the first subway station to the time that you exit the subway station. Once you exit the subway station, that ticket is no longer good for subway rides, but it's still good for however much time you have left in that 100-minute time frame. So the ticket for the one metro ride, it includes all transfers. As long as you're still in the subway underground, that ticket is valid. But once you leave the station, it's no longer valid for the subway. The really convenient way to manage tickets, if you're going to take public transport, that I recommend, that's mostly available pretty much on all buses. I've noticed since the Jubilee year this year, they've upgraded a lot of the buses. I think pretty much most buses have tap and go now. For sure, in the subway, you're going to find tap and go. So tap and go system is just when you use a contactless payment method as your ticket. So whether that's a contactless debit card, credit card, or a smartphone contactless payment method, any of those methods will work on the tap and go. You just look for the contactless symbol on the turnstile when you're going through the metro entrance, tap your payment system, and that counts as your ticket. So the thing to be aware of there is that you have to have a separate payment method for each rider, because that payment method is considered your ticket, and you can't buy two tickets with the same payment method. So each rider needs to have their own card or their own contactless payment method. Because if an inspector were to ask you for your ticket, which won't happen on the underground because you do pass through the turnstile, and so there's no need to check. However, on the buses, you'll notice that no one checks you when you get on the bus. You don't have any interaction with the bus drivers. You don't need to interact with them. They don't sell tickets and they don't check tickets. So when you get on the bus, you're going to either tap and go or use a paper ticket, which I'll explain how to purchase in a minute. And the inspectors may come on the bus, and if they do, then and ask for your ticket, then you just show them the payment method, show them the card you used, and that's how they can check in their system that you've paid. So if you do need a paper ticket, if for whatever reason you don't have a contactless payment method, or you find yourself on a bus or a tram that doesn't have the tap and go system, it can be a good idea to just carry maybe two tickets, because that's a round trip around with you if you think you're going to be using public transport frequently. Tickets, if you want to try out your Italian, they're called biglietto. You can buy them at machines in the underground. You can also buy them throughout the city at places called tabaccheria. Those are the tobacconist shops, and they're really easy to identify because above the door you'll see a sign that's a T. and at newsstands. And Rome is full of newsstands all over the place in the downtown area. So you should have no trouble locating a place to buy a paper ticket. Last but not least, on public transport, I want to highlight a bus route for you, both for its positive side and its rather negative side. So bus 64 on the positive side is very convenient for visitors because once again, here we are at Termini. It has the end of the line, it's Termini station, and the other end of the line is the Vatican. So this bus will take you across the historic center, downtown, and across the city over to the Vatican and back to Termini. So it's really convenient. That being the case, it's a target for pickpockets because they know that a lot of tourists and visitors will be on that bus route because of the fact that it hits all the major tourist spots. So now, I don't say this to scare you at all. I've been here for over 20 years and thank goodness I've never been pickpocketed. But the reason for that is I just don't look like an easy target. And you won't either because you will be very aware of your surroundings. Just follow the tips that I'm about to give you. So if you have your purse, maybe put it across, wear it like a crossbody bag and put your hand on your purse. Men, if you have wallets, maybe put them in an inner breast pocket or in your front pocket with your hand on it. You don't have to go around the city like this, but these tips are for when you're in a crowded area like bus 64, where especially in high season, you're going to be packed in. Rome public transport is crowded on these popular routes. So any area where you're going to feel like people might be really close, it's ideal for pickpockets because when people are getting jostled around, it's easier to bump and take a wallet. They're very skilled, unfortunately. But so long as you're aware of your surroundings, you keep your eye on your belongings, and especially don't look distracted. I know it's going to be hard. Like, look at this picture. You've got buses driving right past the Colosseum. It's going to be really hard not to. My first time when I drove past the Colosseum, I was starry-eyed. But just be aware of your surroundings and you will be absolutely fine. So that's just something to keep in mind. Termini especially is a crowded area. Next, let's talk about some more fun things. So eating out here in Rome and how you can avoid a couple of the most common tourist traps. So the restaurants you see here, I've listed in the bullet points 2 times: lunch around 1 p.m., dinner around 8 p.m. The reason I list that is because a lot of times people might be coming here, if they're coming here for the first time, they're not used to eating a little bit later. We do eat lunch around 1:30 and dinner around 8:30 to start. And the reason I tell you this is because it's not that you won't be able to eat in restaurants outside of those times. Certainly you'll find plenty of restaurants, especially in the crowded downtown areas, popular with tourists, that are open all day long. But the really authentic Roman restaurants are probably going to adhere by these dining times. And so if you were to wander in at, say, 7, the kitchen might not be ready. They might not be ready to seat you. So just be aware that times are pushed a little bit later. And there's a way to get around if you're really hungry around maybe 5, 6 that I'm going to tell you about, the aperitivo. I'll tell you about that later on. So that you're going to eat maybe a little bit later than you're used to. The reason I put check, which, by the way, if you want to try your Italian, is called il conto. The reason I put check is because here in Italy, the check isn't delivered automatically with your food. Like, say, maybe in North America where you'd be at a restaurant and the waiter or waitress would come and say, when they deliver your food, they might just put your check on the table and say, hey, I'll take that when you're ready. It's the exact opposite here. They won't bring your check, generally speaking, unless you ask for it. And the reason for that is cultural. Going out to eat here in Italy is a really important social activity to be with your friends, with your family. And generally, you've got that table for as long as you want. And the wait staff doesn't want to make you feel pressured like you have to leave. And so it's common courtesy to wait for you to ask, because then they know that you're ready to go. So if you're thinking, oh gosh, the service here isn't very good, why aren't they bringing our check? It's because they're really trying to respect the fact that you should feel like you can visit for as long as you want. And when you're ready, you'll let them know that you're ready to leave. Last but not least here, tipping. We do get a lot of questions about tipping. It may feel a little bit weird to know and to actually be in a restaurant where you don't have to tip, but here in Rome and in Italy in general, tipping is not expected. And the reason for that is that the wait staff and the restaurant staff is paid a regular salary. They don't work for tips. If you would like to leave a tip out of a courtesy, if you feel like you've had nice service, you can maybe leave €1 per person, something just like a token. a statement, but like you don't have to leave by any means 20%. That would be exorbitant and unheard of to do here in Rome. So just be aware of that, especially if in your more touristy restaurant and they're trying to allude to the fact that you need to leave a tip. No, you don't. It's okay. Like, don't let them make you think that. Locals don't generally leave tips at restaurants here. And also with taxis, that's not related to restaurants, but since we're talking about tipping, you don't need to leave a tip in a taxi either. If you're paying by cash, it's courteous to round up to the next euro so that the driver doesn't have to make small change, but you can pay with cards in taxis too, so that's really convenient. Let's move over to gelato. So you see that photo on the bottom right. Those gelato tubs are just piled high. It looks so magnificent, this gelato with all these flashy pieces of fruit. And it looks pretty and showy, but actually that's the kind of gelato that I would suggest you avoid if at all possible. Not because it's going to be terrible, but it's a little bit of a tourist trap because what they do is they whip a lot of air into it to make it look very impressive. But an actual, like, authentic gelataio, which is the name for a person who makes gelato, they wouldn't do that. And you would find that the gelato, if the tub is full, it's probably not going to go above the rim. And if it's a really good gelato shop, you might not find hardly any left in the tub because it's so popular. So be aware of that. You're going to see that at places, especially franchise gelato shops downtown. And overly bright colors too is a good tip off because natural gelato is not going to have artificial coloring. And you're going to see places downtown where there's going to be like neon colored gelato, and that's a sure tip off. That's just artificial coloring. Again, it's not going to be terrible, but why would you eat that when you can eat the real thing, the real authentic gelato? As far as restaurants go, a couple of tourist quote unquote traps to look out for. Obviously, if you have a menu with pictures on it, that's designed for visitors because Romans don't need to have pictures on their menus because they know what the things are on the menu. And also, if you see what I call promoters, people out front who are trying to usher passersby into the restaurant, that's clearly for visitors because locals don't need to be told what restaurant to go to. They already know which ones are the ones that they like. And regular Romans would never have a person out front like ushering people inside. So those are just a couple of tips. Now, are you going to get a terrible meal at one of these restaurants? No, it will probably be decent, passable. It's just that, again, it's not going to be like a super local experience like a Roman would have. And that's what you probably are looking for when you come to visit here. Next, I'm going to pass it over to Sophia to talk about how to get into some of the most popular sites.
Thank you, Shelley. So yeah, a big part of the ItaliaPass membership, of course, is tours. So I'll go over fairly quickly. I'll go over the main things that we offer for our members and just some suggestions in general regarding tours. So first off, Colosseum. As Shelley said, it's a huge highlight of Rome, of course. So it's important to note that ItaliaPass members do get one free tour of the Colosseum, which features exclusive access to the arena floor through the iconic Gladiators Gate. And it includes, of course, the Roman Forum as well. We also offer other tours of the Vatican, walking tours of the rest of Rome, which usually include Piazza Navona, the Spanish Steps, the Trevi Fountain, which is another fan favorite. And we do have a tour that includes all of these things. It's not technically a tour, it's more of a pass. It's called the Rome Tour Pass, and it's usually what we recommend for members that are spending at least 2 full days in Rome. It includes everything that I've just mentioned, so Colosseum, Vatican, and walking tours. And it is valid for 2 whole days, which is usually the recommended amount of time to see these attractions. So if you're spending that amount of time there, that's probably the best bet. If not, of course, you can also just book these tours individually if you have less time or if you just want to see the Vatican and not the Spanish Steps or just one or the other, let's say. A more recent benefit that we have that's not for Rome, but it's worth mentioning, is access in Florence to the Uffizi and Accademia galleries. So if you're planning on either going to Florence and Tuscany or doing a quick day trip there, that is something that you have access to as one of our members. And of course, for any other tours, I do recommend just going on italiatours.com and seeing our full catalog. We have plenty of tours in most regions of Italy. And for any tour that you decide to book, you will get $100 off your first order and 10% off of any subsequent order. So if you're a member with us, definitely take a look at the catalog because there's some really, really cool stuff on there. Of course, if you have any questions regarding the tours, feel free to reach out to us directly, and we would be happy to answer them or book them for you. Moving on, Italy Magazine Premium. This is our partner brand, one of our partner brands. It is one of the Italiapass benefits. It's a magazine that's dedicated to all things Italy. And this year there's a special edition that you can see here. It's a special Vatican City edition called Bellissimo, which will give you some insider tips into visiting iconic landmarks within the Vatican specifically. Of course, this year is the Jubilee year. So this issue is focused on this event, and it's crafted for first-time visitors, but anyone who has already been to the Vatican and needs a refresher or wants to get more details regarding the event and the city itself is also welcome to take a look. It is full of tips that you might enjoy. In order to get access to this issue, all you have to do is fill out a brief survey, and you'll find all the information included in the online community that we have. And last but not least, the Borgia Dungeon. This is one of our hidden gems, and of course, one of our benefits for our members. Why is this place special? This is one of the only places in the whole city where you can access the original ancient Roman street level. So it is a very unique experience. And you can book it for free on our website. I believe there are emails that go out periodically, and that you probably already received if you've signed up with us, where you can book your visit, during which you'll hear about the fascinating history of the Borgia family, and get a unique look into the Roman Renaissance as a whole. Not to mention that, of course, your visit will be paired with a wine tasting with one of our expert sommeliers, and an aperitivo to go with it, which is a great way to experience the local food culture. And again, this is only available to our members. It's an exclusive experience. It is a one-of-a-kind experience. So yeah, if you're in Rome, I really recommend taking advantage of it while you're on your trip. And now I'll hand it back to Shelley for some final local tips.
Okay, thanks. So wrapping up here, we'll share a couple of my favorite local tips. This water fountain is one of thousands of water fountains you're going to find downtown in the historic center and throughout downtown Rome. They're called Nasoni, which is plural for Nasone. It means big noses, and that's because of the way the spigot is shaped. These fountains, as you can see in the photo, the water comes out continuously. You don't have to turn it on or anything. You'll just walk by and the water is coming out. It's coming from a deep underground spring. It comes out really cold. So it's truly the perfect way to refill a reusable water bottle. You don't need to buy plastic bottles. You don't need to worry about spending money. Just bring a refillable bottle. If you're in the lounge, you'll be getting a reusable Italiapass bottle. So bring that around. And what's more, there's a smartphone app from the local water utility that will actually, if you download it, it will show you on a map where all these little water fountains are located. So you can even check where your next refill destination will be regarding where you're actually at. So that information and a link to that app will be one of the things that are provided in our resources list that I will email out to you after this presentation is over, along with some other resources of things we've talked about. A second tip that I have for you is to have an aperitivo, which Sophia mentioned when she was talking about the Borgia Dungeon. In that photo, which is the place that I'm going to recommend to you, because of the fact that it has such an abundant aperitivo, it's called Meccanismo. You'll get the link to that. And I'm not promoting it or don't get any kickback. I just really like it because you can see on that board, they give you a lot of little munchies. And so this is the way to kind of bridge lunch to dinner. Aperitivo time is like a pre-dinner drink. It doesn't have to be alcohol. It can be alcohol or no alcohol. The one that you see in the picture is a really iconic one. It's called the Aperol Spritz. Any of these drinks that have alcohol in them, they're going to be very light alcohol content because of the fact that it's pre-dinner. However, there's plenty of non-alcoholic aperitivo. One really famous one is called Crodino here in Rome. Anyway, the point here is that for 13 euros at this Meccanismo, you can get this board of all these finger foods and a drink. But if you want like a really simple aperitivo, you can go to any coffee bar. The general aperitivo time is around 6:30, or even do it before lunch. You can go for a pre-lunch aperitivo, maybe around noon. You can ask for a glass of Prosecco. And in my neighborhood, which isn't particularly touristy, you can get a glass of Prosecco for 4 euros and they'll give you like a little bowl of peanuts and potato chips. So, you can have a little snack before your main meal. And that's a fun local Italian tradition that you can try out. So that wraps up the info part of our presentation. Like I said, you're going to receive an email from me. Because you registered, I have your email address that you were interested in this webinar. So I'm going to send out an email. It's going to include a link to some of the resources I've talked about that we both talked about in this webinar, a recap of the Q&A that we're about to jump into, and it will also have a link to a recording of this webinar. So don't worry if you joined late or if we move too fast or talk too fast. I'm going to put this up on YouTube as a private unlisted link that you're going to get in the email, and you can refer back to it anytime. So at this point, I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and what we're going to do is we're going to go into the Q&A portion. And I see that some of you have already asked questions in the Q&A. So we have 5 already to go. So we're just going to go through these questions one by one. We have about 15 minutes, but don't worry if we don't get to your question. Just type it in. And if we run out of time, I'll answer those offline. In the recap, you'll see the answer.
I can take the first one if you want. I
Okay,
see
sure.
from Michelle, who's saying, I worked with Maria from Italipass to schedule our baggage to be held overnight. And is that okay to leave it overnight? The answer is yes. I misspoke earlier. I apologize. I said that it cannot be sorry. English is not on my side today. Baggage cannot be left in the lounge outside of working hours. I meant that it cannot be picked up outside of working hours. So that's why it's important to have it booked for a specific time. But yes, I'd like to confirm you can leave it overnight. So no worries.
Okay, I can take the next one. I actually looked it up while you were speaking. Susan is asking, how long does it take to travel on bus 64 from Termini to the Vatican? So I looked it up on Google Maps. That's another resource you can use when you're here in the city. Google Maps has a public transport button. You can just click it and it will give you a pretty accurate time. So at this time, which here in Italy right now in Rome, it's 6:30 in the evening, which might be a little busy with commuter time. It's telling me it's 45 minutes. So that would mean if you just got on at Termini and wanted to ride it all the way across, I didn't look at how many stops it was. So it's 46 minutes on the bus. So just consider that's taking into account all the times that it's going to stop. If you were in a car, it would take like 10, 15 minutes depending on traffic. So that's how long that takes. The next one said, oh, it was Lisa asked the same exact question. You guys are telepathic. It says, how long does the bus 64 ride take? Termini to Vatican. That was pretty amazing. You asked one after the other. I'll take this one too. Susan asks, did you say that you can use credit cards and taxis? Indeed, I did. You can use credit cards. You can use contactless payment methods. And again, you're not going to find it asking you, even on the digital system like it does in the United States, how much of a tip do you want to leave? It's probably not going to ask that. Oh, by the way, Uber is also available here in Rome. Sometimes people ask that question. In fact, interestingly enough, the Uber app here in Rome will also suggest a taxi. I think that the local taxi union had it somehow included in the app, so you'll be able to book a taxi through the Uber app or through a taxi app, which I'm going to include in our resources list.
I can take this one. Are there Nazzonis in Florence and Pisa too? Uh, there are fountains that you can find, definitely in both cities. I don't think they quite qualify as Nazzoni though. They're slightly different usually, right?
I think Florence, yeah, to be honest, I don't know because I don't hardly ever get up to Florence, but I remember another member or another guest once of the webinar asked this question and they were asking about Venice and Florence. So I'll go back to my notes because I know for a fact Venice had a map. Florence, I can't quite remember, but I'm in our Q&A recap that you're going to get a link to. If I find the links for these fountains, if there's public water fountains, I'll list them there for you. All right. Is the aperitivo typically a fixed plate dish from the restaurant or is there a mini menu? No, it's going to be generally fixed. If it's a more abundant aperitivo like the one I showed you in the picture with Mecanico, possibly they'll give you like a vegetarian or non option. Generally speaking, the aperitivo is just going to be little finger foods like little bruschette or like I said, even at a coffee bar, you're just going to get like peanuts and potato chips or like little finger food sandwiches. So, but it's generally fixed. They basically will just give you whatever they give to everybody else at aperitivo time. What
What
about rail
about
strikes? You want to take this one?
Most certainly can. So rail strikes can happen, and oftentimes they do. They're usually announced a few days to a week in advance. They look scary, but they're not that hard to deal with. They look scarier than they actually are, I would say, because they do create, some crowds and some disruptions while traveling, of course. But most of the time, if you're on a regional train, those are usually the smaller trains in between towns. You will be able to find if yours gets canceled, you can take the next one. If the next one gets canceled, of course, it can create a problem with the timing, but you can usually just find an alternative train, especially if it's a small distance. And even better for high-speed trains, there's usually guaranteed departures that you can look into. You can usually ask at the front desk as well. So either way, they don't all get canceled. It's just a few departures that get canceled and cause a little bit of chaos, but the front desk agents are usually able to rebook you fairly quickly.
Do you want to take the next one too, since it's a train question?
Of course. Can I use a paper ticket on the trains or do I have to download them to the phones of each of us? If you've booked on ItaliaRail, I would recommend just downloading them on your phone. You can also print, since the tickets are PDF files, you can print them out if you want a paper copy. That's always handy to have. But the way that they validate the ticket is through a QR code. So having them on your phone is completely fine.
Lee is asking, do people tip hotel staff? So generally speaking, what I've heard is that if you're going to use a porter service, it's like 1 to 2 euros per bag. If you typically tip your housekeepers when you go to other hotels, then here in Rome, you would leave them probably 1 or 2 euros a day as well. So I think in the hotel, for the hotel staff, you would probably follow the general guidelines that you would do in other large cities at hotels. That's been generally what I've heard from people. I'm renting a car in Firenze. How do I make sure I do not drive in the wrong zone? Well, I can take this one since I drive here in Rome. Generally speaking, if you're going to be in an off-limit zone, which is like a pedestrian zone or a zone where the cars are limited to just the local residents, it's going to be signposted. It should be signposted pretty clearly. Oftentimes there's an electronic board. Look for the letters ZTL. If you see the letter ZTL, that means that if it says ZTL attiva, like active, then you do not want to go in there because you do not have access. That's it's called zona traffico limitato, so it's a limited traffic area. So you'll have to pay attention to the road signs. That's the only way to know if you're going to be entering a zone. So generally there's going to be some sort of electronic board. Sometimes there's even an electronic arm that comes up and down. In Assisi, for example, there's some areas where you might be able to tell because the street really narrows. I would try to avoid driving in the historic center of any Italian city if at all possible. It's just not easy. It's really not easy because imagine you've got these narrow medieval streets with cobblestones. You've got tourists who are completely enamored and they're looking all around. They don't hear your car coming. They're not looking out for you. My best friend lives in Assisi and like it's crazy when she has to drive to her house in the historic center. It's just like people everywhere. And they look at the cars like, why are you here, car? I'm supposed to be walking here. But it's like, well, but yeah, it's if you can avoid driving downtown, I would recommend it. Maybe leave your car in a parking lot just outside the historic city center, and you can walk to your accommodations. That's what I do when I go to Assisi, for example. I park in a parking lot just outside the pedestrian downtown and then walk downtown.
The next one is, I heard that there are city taxes to be paid at the hotel. Do you have to pay in cash or can credit cards be used? This very much depends on the hotel I found. I would say most big hotels, especially if it's like a chain hotel or just a big famous one, they will take credit cards most of the time. But smaller hotels, and I found myself in that situation fairly recently, they still ask for cash, which hadn't happened to me in a while, but especially I was in Bologna, I'm not sure. I'm assuming bigger places tend to have um, a credit card type of payment. Do you know how much a taxi would cost from FCO to Roma Termini for 5 people and luggage? You said 55 earlier. Yes, that would be for a taxi. However, 5 people, I'm not sure that 5 people would fit in one of the standard taxis, the ones that you would find outside the terminal. I think usually the number is 3 passengers, 4 maximum, but with the bags it tends to be a little tricky. So in that case, you may need 2 taxis, or with private transfers, we offer minivans that can host up to 7 passengers. So that's something you may be interested in.
And sometimes at Rome Termini, you'll find in the queue that there's a larger taxi, maybe one or two down, and there's a person there, like a host, who's managing the line because you have to get in line and it's very like orderly. They might hold you out for a moment and let you get in that larger taxi because you have a bigger group. Or like Sophia said, they might put you in two different taxis. In terms of luggage, there's a certain amount of luggage that's included in the fixed fare, but I don't remember how much. So when I write out the answer in the recap, I will research that for you and make sure that it's clear, because you do want to make sure that you know how much you're expected to pay so that they're not all taxi drivers here are unscrupulous or dishonest, but especially if you take the official taxi, that's really important. An official Rome taxi is a white taxi. It has a taxi number. Go to the official queue. Do not accept rides from people in the airport who are trying to say, "Do you need a taxi? Come with me." Don't do that. But I'll list it here so that you don't get told anything wrong by any unscrupulous drivers.
The next one is my children are coming with me for the first time. We're going to the Vatican, but what else would you recommend they see with a limited time frame? I I mean, anything in Rome is a good idea, I would say. Of course, some suggestions, as I mentioned before, the Colosseum. I know it could almost seem overrated, but I promise it isn't. It's something that just needs to be visited inside at least once. Um, well, what else? Possibly, the Borghese Gallery, I think, is something that often gets overlooked, but it's a really good idea. We do offer guided tours for that as well, in case you're interested. And the Pantheon. The Pantheon is another place that I think is definitely worth a visit. Members do get free access to it. So definitely if you get a chance, I would recommend stopping by there.
And depending on how old your children are, in the past, we've also gotten questions about what are nice things to do with kids. So if these are adult children, all the suggestions that were just given are perfect. I will also include here, just in case, some suggestions for younger kids. We have a children's museum. We have a couple of other things here in Rome that are specific for young children. So we're at 15 minutes. We'll go ahead and do the next question. And don't worry though, if we didn't answer your question, because I will answer it offline and send you the link. And so you'll have all those answers online. You'll get an email from me. But I'll let you take the next question since it's about the Italia Pass benefit.
Of course. So how to get the $50 credit for ItaliaRail? The $50 off is it's a rebate essentially that you get. I believe the time frame is about 48 hours after your purchase. It will automatically be reimbursed. Either on your first order or the first order that qualifies. So if your first order is lower than $50, you may get the $50 off of another. If you just have one, we usually only refund the amount that we can, of course. But it is something that's automatic once you once you book the tickets.
Okay, wow. So we still have 17 questions that are open and unanswered. So that's great. You guys have been amazing. You've asked a ton of really great questions. Don't worry, I'm going to get to all of them. Just click on the link that you get in your email that says Q&A recap. It's going to take you to the community, but you can join if you want to ask questions in the community. You just have to make a quick membership. It's free. But even if you don't want to have an account at the community, you'll be able to view all those questions. It'll just be a page that opens with all the questions. So thank you so much for joining us. We really appreciate you being with us today and sincerely hope that you have a wonderful time here in Rome. Buon viaggio from Rome.
Buon viaggio, everyone. Thank you.
Bye.